Hey, hello, friends. Welcome back. My name's Dan Nelson. Maybe you know that already. And I'm an artist. Today, I'm doing one of my favorite things in the whole world, which is doing several art projects at the same time. One of the reasons I love doing this is, and today's been a good example of this, is simply the ability to focus. Um, I worked on this job that I'll describe for you in just a minute. I worked on it for probably 2.5 hours this morning, and pretty steady. And then before I got sick of it, I had the luxury of putting it aside and working on another job. Well, let me show you a little bit what I'm doing here. If you've caught some of my broadcasts lately, you've heard me talk about this. I'm illustrating a book. Is the book here? Nope, book's not here. At the moment, I've done so far 21 illustrations. So just to show you, again, I'm working on tracing paper. I'm calling it tracing paper. It's actually more literally graphics marker paper, but it's translucent like tracing paper. And this is definitely multitasking. This is the second phase. I'm going to do about 30 illustrations when I'm done. This is phase two. In other words, I did a quick sketch. My client gave me a list of 30 illustrations. I did quick phases of about 20 of them. He and I met together yesterday and refined, based on my first sketches, refined them all. And so just for fun, this is what I'm doing. This is a picture of the heroine in the story, young woman, pregnant, very pregnant, on a donkey, being pulled by her husband, and the donkey is not cooperating. I've spoken more than once and will speak again in the future about the inadvisability. Can I use that big word? About I do not recommend painting or drawing out of your head. But as a professional illustrator, there are times when pretty much you have to draw out of your head. And I call this cashing in time, because before I can do this kind of drawing out of my head, I have to spend a lot of time, relatively speaking, I have to spend a lot of time doing my homework, learning how to draw figures. What does a male human being look like from the back when he's pulling on a donkey? Right? There's my best guess. What does a very pregnant woman sitting on a donkey look like? There's my best guess. What does a donkey look like? Now, in this case, I did no guessing whatsoever. Well, I did, but not much. I Googled on my phone, donkey, looked at several dozen donkeys and said, good, that's the one I want, and then used that to illustrate this picture of a donkey. But again, I do not recommend, and I say this because there are way too many amateur artists think that it's really cool or a sign of skill, an indication of high skill to paint or draw out of your head. The very opposite is true. Drawing from reference, from photos, in this case from books that talk about how to draw human beings or a picture of a donkey, that's what's skillful. Now, when payday comes for myself as an illustrator, payday comes on a day like this when I get to sit down for hour after hour. And by the way, this is only the second phase of these 21 illustrations. Get it? So that you could call this rough draft number 2. And let me demonstrate here a little bit how I do this. Again, I'm working on tracing paper, and I've got a light table here. So see, here's the drawing just before this one. And this was at least my second, probably my third sketch. Are you with me? Sketch 1 and 2 are no longer exist. This is probably sketch 3, and this is sketch 4. And before I go to final artwork, I will re-examine all of this, all of these anatomies, make sure, does this girl really look anatomically correct? And at the moment when I look at it, I go, nah, I don't think so. I don't feel like this knee comes quite enough forward, and maybe her rear end actually sticks out a little bit too far. I don't know, but it's those kinds of decisions that I'll be making um, at least 2 more times before I finish. Does that make sense? So it's a constant process of editing and refining and correcting. At the moment, I'm just doing a little bit of shading. These are going to be pen and ink illustrations when I'm done. So there's one. Um, here's the same man and woman. The man lifting the woman out of the water. So again, I mean, talk about, and all of this is out of my head. Talk about, having to have some idea, some previous learning. And I don't feel like this foot is exactly right. By the way, again, let me demonstrate. If I don't feel like that foot's exactly right, I'm more likely to turn it over this way and make the corrections on the back side. Yeah, because you see it with fresh eyes when you turn it over. And so I'm making a little modification to this foot, then turning it back over this way. Now I can erase the foot I had a few minutes ago. This is a really good technique for those of you who are aspiring artists. By the way, please notice the way I'm holding my pen. That's not because I'm a weird artist. That's because I'm a good artist. There's a time now. I'll switch to. So there's an improved foot. Let's do some shading. Now look at the way I'm holding the pencil, because I'm doing a different thing now. Now I'm concerned about little tiny movements, about shading and so forth. Does that make sense? So that just shows you a little bit. Let me show you another one real quick. Here's the same girl, the heroine. A number of rattlesnakes have been thrown at her, and that makes you wonder what the story's about, doesn't it? And the rattlesnakes miraculously do not hurt her, but turn around and pursue the people who threw the snakes at her. That's a little bit of spoiler there. Again, now I'll work on this one. This should have been the easiest one. It's a male. It's a strong, the guy, again, same guy, same character. There's several other characters in this book. In fact, I think, yeah, here we go. And here's this guy does not appear. Here's the heroine holding a baby, her older sister holding a baby, her mother at a spinning wheel, and 2 boys playing in the front yard of an old mountain shack. So there's a lot of different characters going on. This should have been the easiest one because, goodness sakes, I should be able to draw a male figure. It was my choice to have him bare-chested. I'm not sure that my client's going to go for that. He may not. I experimented with putting, different kinds of bib overalls on him, and did not like the effect very much at all. So I'm back to bare-chested guy wearing leather leggings, actually. So this is a period piece. The story. It's set in some abstract historical period, non-specific historical period. Anyway, so I guess just one more thing I want to say about this and this kind of work. Sure, it looks like great fun when I'm only doing it for 10 minutes. It's actually pretty intense. And again, I did this trick over and over and over to get this anatomy to this point of correct. Anyway, it's fun for 10 minutes, but it gets pretty intense and pretty exhausting. It's the kind of work that makes you want to take a lot of coffee breaks. Do you follow me? I'm not complaining. I mean, it beats the heck out of digging ditches or doing anything else I can think of, honestly. except maybe practicing a musical instrument, but that's another story altogether. But I just want to make the point that, again, to you, perhaps you aspiring young artists, yeah, it's pretty tiring. It's quite the brain drain. So the good news is, after I couldn't take any more of this, and I worked on, I believe, 18 drawings this morning. When I couldn't take any more of this, then I changed gears completely and went to this job. And I also described this for you the other day. Let me show you what I sent to my client a couple days ago. Yeah, good question. Yes, sometimes, absolutely. The chat was, sometimes after I've done both sides, do I sometimes use tracing paper and the light table to trace to a separate piece of paper? Excellent question. Absolutely, yes, yes, yes. Whenever I need to. I mean, if things go really smoothly, I can get the job done with just one piece of paper. But about 1/3 of the time, I would guess, that I actually have to move something and trace it. Like the figure's okay, but the head's a little off, then I'll get another piece of paper and take the body and the head and move them like this till they line up. Does that make sense? Good question. Thanks for asking that. So this is what I sent to my client. Let's see if I can get it in field. So I gave him 4 options. He had already approved of this style pretty much. But I said, okay, but within this style, here's 4 options. Scratchboard or woodcut style. This is B, scratchboard with simple shading, hatching added, scratchboard, a simpler scratchboard, and then simpler with shading. And he came back and said he liked A the best. So that's A. Then the rest of the day, or not much of the day, then I've spent doing the other illustrations. And by the way, let me give you a quick review for those of you who didn't catch it. This is what I call a poor man's scratchboard. It's enamel coated or shiny paper, like that you get at office supply, that I have sprayed a good, generous layer of workable fixative. Any spray like this, of course, you do it outdoors, not indoors. If it smells bad, it's killing brain cells. And sometimes even if it doesn't smell bad. So I've done 4 illustrations, and I'm done with these. And after I finish them, by the way, I spray a final fixative on that, because I'm actually not finished. I'm actually going to come back, now that I've sprayed a fixative on top of that, and do even more touch-up, this time with a felt tip marker. And of course, when the last word on all of these is going to be, I scan them into my computer, and I Photoshop whatever I need to, whatever I needs fixing in Photoshop. So let me demonstrate just a little bit for those who might have missed the other day when I was showing this. Again, I call it a poor man's scratchboard. I'm using scratchboard tools. I don't know what to call it. It's a scratcher. I'm sure it's got a name, but it's just a scratchboard tool. And you can look, just Google it, and you can find that anywhere. The fun part is it very easily scratches the ink off this homemade scratchboard. Now, you could get real scratchboard, is much, much easier to work with, much more forgiving, but also much more expensive. So this works just fine. So this is what I've been using. I would say for big, quote unquote, for more serious jobs. I mean, obviously, this is a cartoon. It doesn't have quite the burden that a more serious illustration would have. You can see me using real scratchboard on YouTube. Just do a search for etching, Dan Nelson, etching a selfie, etching a selfie. And if you look for that, you'll find me doing serious scratchboard illustration, not using cheater scratchboard, but the real product. And I talk quite a bit. I do quite a demonstration in that video if you're interested. So I'm going to do just a few more minutes of this, and then I'm going to show you. See, isn't that fun? Am I in the screen? There you go. Come on, come on, come on. There we go. It is fun. It's a very fun medium. And the reason I do it, the reason I pitched it to my client, it's just it has kind of a classy look about it, I think. Um, it's a cartoon, but done in an unusual manner, so it's pretty interesting, visually interesting. Do just a little bit more. I'm almost finished with this one. Most of what I do is I drew these fat lines with a brush, and then I spend most of my time just coming back and carving, as you can see, right down the middle of those fat lines. So to every single line in the brush phase gets turned into a double line when I scratch down the middle of it. And let me do just, again, a little bit of shading right here. And I'm going to call that at least finished enough for now. Okay, so the next thing I'll do is spray this with a plastic coat finish, a final coat, and then that'll let me handle a little bit more roughly and do Sharpie marker, that kind of stuff. Then, of course, I scan it and tweak it in Photoshop. Yeah, it does look like a matchstick creature. It's a fun technique. I enjoy it a lot. Okay, now, third job of the day, and this one is a bit of a groaner because I honestly thought I was finished with this yesterday, or was it the day before? And am rather dismayed that, but glad I caught it. So let me let me get you off my chest. Remember this painting? Some of you were following me back then, day before yesterday, and this can be instructive because this is 3 cheers for looking at a painting a second day or a subsequent day, because as I did, I discovered I had 3 or 4 figures here. Well, one was a child, and then so 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And as I looked at them, when I came back with fresh eyes the second day, I kind of slapped my head and went, "Oh my goodness, they're just a tiny bit too tall." And I seriously considered just letting it go, but no, I thought, oh, you know that feeling. So last night, then, now here's the problem, if you will. Here's the problem with painting my technique, because most of it is layers of transparent. That means you can't just come and slap an opaque correction onto the canvas. It'll look like a postage stamp slapped on top of your painting. So you have to make corrections subtly through process of layers. And that's just the price I pay for painting in this method. That I like the method so much, but the downside of it is when you have to make a correction, it's a bummer. Now, as you can see, I've decided then to just make my first correction using these pencils, because it puts me kind of in a drawing, kind of in a literal, or technical, anatomy drawing, puts me in a drawing frame of mind, which tends to be a slightly more realistic or literal than my painting mind. Does that make sense? Okay, now I don't know. Do I want this person facing me? I can't remember if he or she was going toward me or away from me. These two people look too much the same. Okay, so tell you what, this one's going to be facing us. Let's give her a narrower chin then and a little bit of a neckline. That'll help make it appear like she's coming toward us. And I'll make this one going away from us. So, okay, and I'm not going to make you watch me do all of this, but I want you to see part of the process. So there's a little bit of drawing to get me in the ballpark. The next thing I'm going to do is pick up some, here's my palette, pick up some liquid, right, that makes the paint dry fast, which I like, and it makes it transparent, which is very important at this point. So I'm going to mix up some dark something. It has to more or less match what's already in this part of the painting. So I can't just make up any colors I want, but I believe that will do. So now I'm going to come in here, and again, this is all making corrections. First of all, I can do his head. This is a man, I'm sure. And his head is dark, so there's his dark head. And of course, in making a correction, I feel like it's safer to paint a wider scope than simply what I'm correcting. Does that make sense? So I'm not going to limit my brush strokes here to the part I'm repairing. I want to blend. You have to patch in a correction. Again, you can't. You don't want it to look like a, something is stuck something in after the fact on your painting. So whenever you do darks, of course, you get dark with transparent colors and light with opaque. So I'm getting dark, therefore I'm using transparent colors right now. Now, if I can make this correction, see, so I just lowered them all like this, got a quarter of an inch, half an inch, something like that. If I can correct this painting, it's a pain. How many of you know that when you think you're finished with a painting, then you have to come back and make corrections? That's really a bother. Your heart's just not in it anymore, right? So this is suck it up. I'm a trained professional. I can do this. You have to slap myself around a little bit. Say, come on. Okay, come on. You can do this. You can do this. Just thank God you caught it before the painting was out in the real world. You with me? Yeah. That really does hurt when you discover. Yeah, the close guy, I do want him kind of soft. Yes, good point. In fact, all of these, and how much do I want any of them standing out is a very good question. And not an easy answer. I don't know what the answer to that is. It's just like, okay, you do it and then you think, is that too much, too little, whatever. You know what's kind of funny? This person here, looks like all of us, because of the way I did the drawing, looks like she's wearing a hoodie. What a great idea. I don't know if I've ever intentionally painted a hoodie on somebody before. Don't want the class facing, yes. Did I make him? Yes, I think that's a good point. I do want him facing away. I missed that. Sorry. I do want him facing away so he doesn't get, his face would be too close to the camera and would create too much attention. That's a good point. So now I'm going to try to mix up some flesh tone color. As a matter of habit, I almost always try to make when I'm doing a neutral scene like this, that it's not somebody's wedding, it's just a scene. I try to make my figures racially abstract. I just don't want to give anybody reason to complain or anything, because I just want so they nobody can really tell, is that a black person or a white person. Just want it's the figure standing in for human being, and it would be counterproductive for me to, in my opinion, for me to be making statements, racial statements. So I try not to. Just try to keep it vague. Um, not bad. Not bad. Not good. Just not bad. Um, I'm going to do these figures the way I do all of my painting process, which is paint in stages, paint in process, paint little by little. You can tell even by the way I'm holding the brush that I'm not getting all uptight. I'm not trying to get hyper accurate. But when I'm finished, I want the figures to be accurate. Yes, I do. But they have to look as though they happened, they came off the end of my brush easily. They can't look like I sweated and strained and so on. So I'm painting them with fairly quick motions. Now this definitely, speaking of this definitely looks like a white person. So, you know, might be in a little bit of trouble there. I'm not going to go nuts. Oh, I started to talk the other day, about when you're doing figures. In my opinion, they have to be thin. I guess I touched on it. I don't know if I finished it or not. You don't want chubby people because in other words, you don't want realistically shaped people. You don't want realistically shaped Americans. You want realistically shaped French people. In other words, you want thin people because if the person is like typical American, that means 25 to 40 pounds overweight, right? Um, and if you paint them that way, even though that is typical, it will look as though you're trying to paint somebody specific, like your Aunt Maud or Uncle Barney. Does that make sense? So you don't want people thinking, is that supposed to be somebody I know? Who is that? Is that supposed to be the governor of North Carolina? Is that supposed to be the mayor? Does that make sense? And believe me, I know I'm right about this. Oh boy. You're not painting the real, you're painting the ideal. Uh, Painting corresponds to fiction writing. Photography corresponds to nonfiction writing. A photographer can take his camera and point and take pictures of things that are real, no matter how unlikely they are. A painter doesn't have the luxury of painting um, peculiar things, like at least if you're painting, again, if you're making statements, then in my opinion, you're not an artist, you're a statement maker. And but so you have to paint the general, not the specific. The specific will not work. I've got somebody knocking on my door, and I'm hoping that they're calling. I can tell they're telling me supper is ready, which is good news, but I'm not quite. Look at the exact quote. Thanks, Lake. I'll be there in a few minutes. Darken that guy's hair and darken this woman's hair. It is hard. It is hard to know how much detail. Sometimes, like I did right there, I'll do just with a scratch, I did a horizontal line through, and I think it worked very well in this case. Can I zoom in anymore? Yeah, I just scratched a horizontal line in that woman's face, and it looks ever so slightly like a brow ridge, eyes, eye socket, and so that works quite well, I think. Now onto this person, a little bit of a hoodie, a little bit more dark down here. Some hair on that person, some hair around that head. One of the biggest mistakes, by the way, when you're doing abstract figures like this, one of the easiest mistakes to make is to make the heads too large. So watch out for that. Don't let them get too big. Okay, here's where I feel like I'm at. Let me wipe off these brushes because I'd like to put some shade on the left side, on the shady side of this blue shirt. Um, I think I'm good enough. I'm the painting at the moment is to the point where I can leave it. I feel fairly confident that it's good enough, but of course, I still can come back, will come back one more time. Now, sometimes I don't have this luxury, of course, and I'm happy to say most of the time when I'm painting under pressure, I tend to do well, amazingly, and not make big, like when I'm painting at a wedding. I don't usually make big mistakes. I don't think. No, I know that I don't. I don't know why. Um, I consider this kind of a big mistake. I could have gotten away with it, and probably nobody would have said, "Don't those figures look a little tall?" But it might have bothered somebody. They just didn't know why. A little scratching. Okay, so that's what I've done today, and I am being hailed for supper. That is a really good thing because I'm hungry. Thanks for joining me today. I hope to be back tomorrow. I do know what I'm doing tomorrow. I'm going to finish work, move forward on all these illustrations, and hopefully I am done with this painting. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, leave a comment, and tell your friends about it. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Thanks, Heather. I like my cars too.